Welcome to your first part of your two-part series about how to create 120 different content ideas in just 10 minutes. My name is Christora Osters. I am a wedding photographer, been one for 9 years. I'm also a former educator. And so because of that, I have taken some of the chunking exercises that we utilize in high schools to actually brainstorm. And we're going to utilize those today so that we can figure out what our best content strategies are for social media.
So let's talk about this particular paper. We're going to use all of the different levels of the circle. For example, number one is going to be your big overarching idea. This is really, for example, for me, it would be wedding photography. It's just super large, super broad. You can come up with a lot of different ideas from this one big idea. So that's the idea of this second area of circles that we see. The second area, or number twos, are all going to be breaking it down or chunking bits and pieces that you actually know about your big idea into smaller and smaller pieces. And I'm going to show you how I do this with my own, but you're going to have different niches within your topic area. For example, for wedding photography, it could be something like editing, weddings in general, posing. So again, niche down your large idea. So number two, we're going to fill in all of these. The third segment that we're going to talk about are these outside, and these are going to be your pillar content ideas. Number three becomes exactly what we go back to over and over and over again to come up with those ideas with social media when we are not motivated or thinking through our creativity really easily. So again, these would be chunks of information that would all make up number two. So the idea here is that you start large and you break it down further and further and further. And for each of those number twos, we break them down into chunks of information. Let's see how that's done. I'm going to go through an entire example for you. So we're going to start with wedding photography because that is the bread and butter of what I do. Wedding photography is my overarching idea of going in and creating information on social media. You want it to relate to what your clientele is looking for. So again, for me, that's wedding photography. For you, it might be something like a new novel, it might be wedding painting, things of that sort. My second level, I'm going through and I'm putting in various aspects that I would break down to describe wedding photography. For example, first I would have weddings. Then I would have engagements. These are both things that relate back to wedding photography and is important. Editing is another huge process along with equipment. So both of those are two that I'm going to include on here. My equipment might help out for people seeing that I'm well prepared. It might help my ideal client to understand why I'm buying the information I'm buying. I also want to have tips and tricks on there so that my ideal client knows that I'm going to present them with everything that they need to have the easiest wedding day. Coloring is a question that a lot of people have. What should they be wearing? We're also going to go in and again, we're going to talk about editing and we're also going to talk about posing. And I'm going to tell silly stories about disasters that have happened at specific weddings. All of these disaster stories that people are going to see are going to have an entertaining aspect to them along with an educational aspect. The idea between all of these is that they all relate back to the wedding photography business. All of this, you could actually go in and make more than one of these for wedding photography. I could come up with a bunch more. But from wedding photography, if I break it down, I want to build out aspects and chunks of weddings that would make sense or of engagements that would make sense. So for example, for engagements, people might want to know about location. They might want to know about how to prep their guy. So many people are not prepared for going and taking photos. It's the first time they've ever been in front of a camera. For other engagements, they might want to see the seasonal recommendations or tips and tricks that I have for engagement pictures. They might want to go in and actually, figure out what the poses are ahead of time or the poses that work for everyone. Again, all of these are chunks of information that could relate to engagements. However, there could be a lot more that goes into this than simply those 5 elements. I actually have 2 of these that I utilize with the exact same thing around the outside, and then each of them have 10 of these pillar contents instead of simply the 5. Equipment, I'll talk about lenses, flashes, manufacturers. I'll also go in and speak a little bit about like fun gear that people typically will buy and maybe they don't use, but maybe they do use. And then the must-haves for wedding photography. Again, I'm looking at who my ideal client is here. So for engagements, my ideal client is actually relating to the people who I'm photographing. My equipment might be more for my followers or the people who are photographers themselves. I'll talk about tips and tricks for timelines, tips and tricks for golden hour shots. There are so many things that I can actually write about onto this that relate back to wedding photography. And it's an idea of getting your brainstorming out there. Getting the information that's in your head onto paper is going to be so beneficial. So I might talk about detail shots and what that all includes, family dynamics. Just all of this comes together to help out with that wedding day and getting the photography as good as it possibly can be. So then finally I'll go through and I'll talk about like colors and what to wear. I might say something like, what would you do for formal? What would you do for casual outfit? What would be some things that you could think about if you were talking about, you know, the shoes that you're going to be wearing or color combinations that could really make a lot of sense together depending on where you're photographing or what you and your future spouse actually look like. I also could talk about seasonal tips. So I'm going to be right back because I'm going to fill out the rest of this and then you'll see what an entire one looks like. So we have our 40 pillar content pieces, but we need to break this down even further to get to 120 or a third of your year of posting on social media. We're going to discuss all of that in part 2 of this series. I can't wait to see you there and create 120 pillar pieces.